In the parking lot coming in like there normally is right at 9 o'clock, so I'll go ahead and get started. I don't have a lot to say up front, just mostly asking questions. For those of you who've been here, ask questions and I answer them. I guess what I will talk about a little bit is our fiscal situation, which is still strong. It wasn't necessarily when I got here, which I didn't even know. I think some of you may know if you remember. So back in like 1998, our debt was about 13 million. It was about 110 million when I took office. So it went up quite a bit. What I also saw looking back is our tax revenue. We were spending, I think our budget was about 20 million, went up to like in the 50s in that time too. So it was a lot. There was a lot of spending and a lot of debt that went on during that time. But what I didn't see until the 2018 budget projections they came to me for 2018. These projections were given to me, and it showed these are our operating reserves. We try to keep them at 20%. That's so that cash flow, that type of thing. So we have cash on hand for certain things. So we always try to keep that above 20%. You can see in 2016 it was 35. It was projected in 17 to be 23 as part of their budget, which was pre-me. 2018 budget, and then this was at the run rate we were going. This is what was projected, and I asked staff, I said, how long has this been going on? How long have you known this? Since 2012, they knew that this was coming. So obviously this is a problem, and so we embarked on a lot of things to try and fix things, streamlining things that we do, being more efficient. A lot in 2017 or 2018, 2019, a lot of efficiencies, a lot of cutting where we needed to. I think we dropped 15 employees or so overall, but you can see what we did. You can actually see the actuals of what ended up happening. So 2017 audited ended up being 33%, 34%. We ended up in 2021. We actually had 60% reserves. Now you see in 2023, it's projected, or it was 30.5% in 2023, our last fiscal year that all the financials are complete. This drop was because we took money out of our reserves since we had that extra money, and we used it towards capital projects like roads and parks and all those types of things. So without these hard decisions made, in that time frame, we wouldn't be here. So, and debt is also down from 110 to about 84 million. So that just gives you an idea of where we're at financially. We've done a lot with our roads, a lot with our parks, which you know about. But really, I'm here to answer your questions today on the various topics.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for doing this morning. And I'm new to Orland Park. I moved here last year, so it'll be a year at the end of February. So I've been watching all the Board of Trustee meetings and just kind of getting familiar with what the goals are and what we're working towards. And you seem to have a good vision. And so I watched the December 16 joint board review meeting, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. It was very frustrating, and you kind of seemed frustrated by the end of it, so I just wondered if there would be any more follow-ups or...
So I guess specifically I got to know what you mean, the joint
like that TIF meeting.
Yeah, I know the meeting.
Like the 800,000 that wasn't budgeted, and they were asking what it was for, and then it didn't seem to make sense with the when they were talking about the when they were the guy was asking about that one part wasn't with the accounting standards, and then
Sure. Okay. Yeah,
just
so
all of that.
The attorney for District 135 was a new attorney. He said he hadn't reviewed anything, and he came up and asked a lot of questions that he should have reviewed, number one. Number two, he asked questions about, he said, he actually read a letter and said that the audit was completed, and you've probably seen this on social media as well, the audit was completed not according to accounting standards. That was actually not true. He forgot the part of the letter that said component units were not with GAAP accounting standards. Component units are things like the 911 board. 911 is a completely separate entity. So the reason we don't do the accounting for the level of depth is because they get their own audit. So we're not auditing them, we're taking their information. So the museum board, Stellwagen Farm, there were 501c3s that were created that somehow we still hold financials on our books for them, but they get separately audited. So the village itself was audited completely according to accounting standards, number one. Then they went on and on about this $800,000 miscellaneous. In fact, I've been accused of stealing that money by some, which is absolutely absurd. But they can answer to that at a later date. That was miscellaneous, $800,000 was interest expense that we had to pay out of the general fund. If you recall, the TIF at that time, the last audit, we wrote off $47 million. The Downtown Triangle TIF, from its inception to now, lost $47 million. That's $47 million we've been paying out of other funds to pay for the interest, pay for all that. No spending from anyone on this board in that TIF. So it's all been, so that's what it was. So that $800,000 was interest to cover the interest payments that it doesn't generate enough money to pay the interest payments, so it's paid by that. And the reason it was in miscellaneous is because it was written off this year. So.
The percentages is of what percentages?
So this is our general fund, so pretty much our operating expenses. So we keep about this much of our yearly operating expenses in reserves.
Oh,
So 20% operating reserve is about 2.5 months worth of cash.
Also, my other question is that, is there any reason why Orland Park is not joining the Silver Sneakers?
You've asked this question 5 times. You know the answer to the reason why. Because we have to pay to be part of Silver Sneakers. It costs us a lot of money to be part of it. It's not free. It's something that we pay for. We offer at Sportsplex, the same answer I've given you for, I think, 2 years, that we, at Sportsplex, we offer significant reductions in fees relative to the marketplace. It's subsidized, the Sportsplex is subsidized 50% by tax dollars. We're not going to subsidize even more by paying Medicare for the Silver Sneakers program. That money would have to come from somewhere, which would mean we'd have to cut something else. Well, expenses, taxpayers, we only have so much money. We can't, I mean, I don't suppose you would want us to borrow to pay for Silver Sneakers.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning.
I live in the Fernway subdivision.
Uh-huh.
I've been there 50 years. And we're in the last phase of the streets and the drainage and everything. Streets turned out good. The ditches, my culvert is below grade. It holds water in the ditch.
That's what,
I called Jack Nevin, I think his name, and he come out and built a trench like to try to drain the water away, and it's below, water don't run uphill. And then the landscapers that laid the side, they laid like 4-inch gaps between, I twisted my ankles twice cutting the grass. Could we do anything about this?
so Bonnie, can you get his address?
I have some pictures here for you, too.
So Bonnie, can you get his address and have him look at it? I mean, so Fernway was a multi-million-dollar project, about it was supposed to be 10 years. I think we accelerated it to 5 years. Fernway was was annexed by the village way back when, and it wasn't to village codes, it was to county codes, so that's why they have ditches, not sidewalks. And all of those ditches had to be redone because over the years they were nowhere near what they need to be to handle the water, and the roads and all that stuff are in good shape. But she can check out specifically what the issue is at your particular house. You're welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning.
I was wondering if you should win re-election, what would be your short and long-term goals for Orland Park?
So, I mean, that's that's kind of campaign related, so I got to be careful about answering, but I think my short and long-term goals have been pretty obvious, the same things we've been doing. So we fixed our financials. So we're going to keep that trend going. We've fixed, so this is Schuessler Park. We've redone Schuessler Park. We've redone, well, Dugan Park is next year. We're putting in the police training facility. So we've caught up on a lot of our capital needs, and we have a 5-year plan. It's implementing that plan. The plan is there. We just need to implement it. And we need to keep doing so fiscally responsibly like we have. We've lowered the debt, about 25% since I've been here. While doing all this, while fixing this mess, this was a mess. The Triangle, $47 million of debt that we inherited. It's gone. I mean, it's money that they lost. So we have to redevelop the Triangle. Here's a schematic of the proposed park at the Triangle as part of the improvements that were suggested there. So and approved there. So we actually have a project at the Triangle. So that was conceptualized, in my opinion, wrongly, and I was pretty vocal about that in the 2000s because we took out existing businesses for that, and we ended up losing $47 million because we tried to play developer with basically our money. We spent over $100 million there that could have been used on other things. So at the end of the day, you look forward 22 years, we finally have a project there that we think is viable. We've done a lot of things in the last 8 years as far as businesses go. We faced a lot of problems. We had COVID, not easy. We had riots, not easy. We had, we lost Carson's Home Goods, Sears, Toys R Us, and Babies R Us, all in the same month in February 2018. Yet the mall, Sears is still, we're still working on Sears. We had a plan for that. COVID killed the theater plan for that because the theater business obviously tanked, but everything else there has been redeveloped. So we got Von Maur. You think about the businesses, Von Maur, Steinhoffels, Tesla, some of the smaller ones, Portillo's, Rainbow Cone, Seasons 52, Fogo de Chao is coming. Pete's Fresh Market is opening February 5th. We've added 5,000 jobs in the last 7 years. So those are the types of things that, we just need to stick with the plans that we've implemented. Previously, there were no studies done on the condition of our parks. We were studying the condition of our roads, but we weren't doing anything about it. We weren't studying our ponds. All those things. We've now basically got a fact base to work from and a plan to get all of those things into a sustainable, ongoing maintenance capital type of position after we catch up with all the things that weren't done. And I think you've probably all observed all the road work we've been getting done. So those are the things. We just have to implement that plan and keep going.
Good morning. I have 3 questions about 151st Street.
Okay.
First one is, if you know, who bought the old Don's property? I saw that was sold and what the plans are for it. And the second question is for the manual car wash that's been shuttered for many years.
Uh-huh.
And also the south shoulder that nobody seems to take care of, that's west of Larkspur for about 3 blocks. It's always overgrown.
Okay.
Those are the 3 questions.
Okay, well, I can't, so the last question, the south part of Larkspur, as far as it's always overgrown, I guess we can look into that. I off the top of my head, I can't tell you. So if you see something that's overgrown during the year, quite frankly, mowing crews and things aren't working right now. So if you see something overgrown during the year, you can go to 311, you can call our office, and we'll get someone to address it. If I hear about it in January, there's really not much I'm going to be able to do about it until the spring, but she'll look into it. Regarding Don's, I heard Friday that someone bought it, and that's really as much as I can talk about it. Bottom line is it's a very small piece of property, and with MWRD requirements, which stormwater storage, it's going to be a really tough piece to develop because it's so small. The car wash, again, I don't know who owns it or bought it. Those are private properties, so We have a lot of them in the village. So I'm not familiar with it. I have not seen a plan for any of them.
How is the 2023 audit going, and when do you think it would be completed?
As was said, I believe when the audit was done in November, 2023 audit's supposed to be done by the end of March. I think right now we're on still on schedule for March, based on the last thing that I saw. So, as the auditor had said. There's no other questions?
Morning.
Good morning.
Seen some people working on Old Fridays. Is there any plans for that? Do you know if anything's going to go in there?
That's Fogo de Chao.
Pardon me?
Fogo de Chao. The restaurant Fogo de Chao is going in there, but they're not what, until December they're planning on opening, or November?
They're going a little slow.
There's one over here.
Hi, good morning. Just if you could speak at a high level, the retail occupancy rate of the village compared to other villages, are we in good shape, or? I mean, you've got a lot going on.
I don't, so it's not something I regularly track as retail occupancy because it goes up and down so much. Retail business go out of business, they get replaced. And relative to other towns, what other town are we gonna look at that was actually a comparable? I mean, there's nothing south of I-88 that's a comparable here. So there's really not much to compare to. We are the retail, we have 12 million retail square feet. But I look at it as I look up and down. Our focus has always been, and will continue to be, and it wasn't like this before I got here, is to focus on the core. The core being 143rd to 163rd of LaGrange and 159th, okay? That's what I would call our retail core, and we need to focus on that, okay? I do know my predecessor met with the mall and wanted them to tear it down and turn it into a town center, outdoor with residential, kind of like a Burr Ridge thing. And I'm like, and to compete with Oak Brook, I'm like, are you out of your mind? Oak Brook's a top 10 mall in the country, and it's unique. But when it was 0 degrees last week, was anybody at Oak Brook? No. We're one of the top 4 malls in the region. The mall itself, other than Sears, is fully occupied with a wait list, so that much I do know. And they've been upgrading their tenants as well as things have gone on. But our mall's a top 1% traffic mall in the country, and it was even back before I got here. So trying to get rid of it was, quite frankly, is insane. I mean, it's 10% of our tax base directly, probably 40% indirectly with the traffic that it brings. And it's the safest mall in Chicagoland. So, and just look around nationwide. Name me a thriving town that lost its mall. I don't think you're going to find one. So we've got to protect it, and we got to protect everything around it, which was why the Denny's being redeveloped to Portillo's. Another tough site because it was a small site, and the pickup and drive-through of Portillo's actually made that workable. Because it's such a small site, they have to store all their water. So you think of they have to put a pond there, right? Or they have to store it underground, which is very expensive. So those small sites get difficult. The other ones around the Ring Road, the challenge is the same thing. There's no more storage at the mall because of all that parking. So likely if the Sears get redeveloped, one of the things we'll do is partner so that we can get a big pond put and take up some of that the unneeded parking so that other lots can use that for storage to make them more developable. So that's that area. And if you think all the way down, LaGrange, so let's just start at the north end of LaGrange. You have the triangle, okay? We had a fully occupied, it was a strip center, it was old. It was the only thing here when I was growing up. Where the bank was, the post office was, the grocery store was, everything. And I could walk to it. It was literally 300 yards from where I grew up, okay? It was still fully functional, right? It still had the concrete company, Davidson. It still had a hardware store. It had the lumber yard, and everything was rented. And we basically started borrowing money to force those businesses out and buy out those businesses because we played developer. Now, would that eventually probably redevelop? Well, sure, but we should have let developers do that via the marketplace and let them come in. If it was such a great deal, developers would have been all over it. And it wasn't something that needed to be done yet. It just didn't. Clearly, because we're 20 years hence, and we still don't have that redeveloped. But finally, we've got a project there, and I do know that they're very close on some exciting announcements, which I think are going to happen very shortly. So there's some things there that are going to happen, and we just approved the project in October, and dirt's going to start moving this summer on it. So we'll see some. So that's the entry into town, and then if you look as you keep going down, Egg Harbor's going into where City Barbecue was at, right? City Barbecue, it was actually, so a lot of what's happening with some of the vacancies you see is that national guys are buying these and they're kicking out certain tenants to bring in others. So Egg Harbor's coming in there. City Barbecue wants to come back here. They did well here. They want to come back, but they doubled their rent. They're like, we just couldn't afford the rent. So, so you have that, and then you keep coming down. Everything's occupied, coming down. There's a couple of small strip centers that have struggled ever since LaGrange was redone, and they're way below grade now, right? There's a couple of those. But then everything else, you think of where the Toys R Us that we talked about, right? You got BJ's, you've got Chipotle wanted to move there, and that opened up the expansion for Whole Foods. I think one of these strip centers too, Traditia, just doubled its size by expanding. So that's a great Polish restaurant if you haven't been there, mom and pop restaurant. We always hear no mom and pop restaurants. And we have 150 some restaurants, like 70 of them are family owned. So they exist. They're just like Traditia, which sits, not right in front of you, right? Joy of Thai, same thing, not, great restaurants, just not right in the main strip center, right? Let's face it, the main strip is gonna be more corporate because it's just larger rents. But Von Mauer obviously went in. The mall's fully rented. Orland Park Place, we have, I can't remember what's going in, but something's going into the Binny's, and Binny's expanded by going to next to the Toys R Us, but there's something going into the Binny's. We just approved subdividing the back into outlots, so they have plans for more stuff on 94th Avenue there. The Orland Park Place, Steinhoffel's just took 2 big spaces, but it took them, about a year and a half to build it out. If you haven't been in there, it's beautiful, by the way. Obviously, Darvin's just expanded, and we just named them Business of the Month. So they're doing great. We have a lot of restaurants that are number one. Bonefish Grill's number one in their whole chain. Cooper's Hawk still remains number one, and that's not even, in my opinion, the best location in the world, off of Harlem, right? They're doing good, and even we've seen that Harlem corridor even do, start to fill up. Some of those places that went out, you've got Rainbow Cone, and you've got another restaurant that went in there. I can't remember the names of all of them. Yeah, Los Tamales, and then there's also the Mediterranean place that went in there. But going down the Grange Road still, you keep going down there, I believe, I think there's something going to go into Houlihan's. The Champs, I'm still scratching my head about, but one of the problems with Champs is it's so big. It's like 12,000 square feet, and restaurants just don't want to be that big. And so that's a big problem that they have. But you've got Wu's House there. The theater is knocking down the garage, and they're going to use that as an outlot, so they have some ideas of something they can add there. So, we're really thriving down all of that area. And then 159th, all the auto dealers are doing great. It's the number one auto roll in the state. You've got the one Waterfall Plaza we've struggled with since before I got here. If you look at it, like there's one on 151st, about just past Regent, east of Regent. There's a strip center there. They did a complete facelift on it all, and they rented them all. Imagine that. You get them leased. It's the ones that are old and dated and they haven't put anything into that seem to struggle the most. And how do we get them to invest in it? I know that the auto dealers have approached the owner of Waterfall Plaza multiple times to buy it. That's what I think eventually will happen. But his asking price is just too high. So there's some of that. But Generally speaking, we are doing very, very well. I think our restaurants, we have a incentive. We have 2 incentive programs to help address these problems. Small retail, we don't really have. I mean, those come and go. But what gets hard is the big boxes because we have them all here already, right? So how many of them are there left, right? So we have an incentive for, I believe it's boxes either over 10,000 or 20,000 square feet. If they're empty, we do have a sitting incentive program for someone that fills it that comes from out of town. If they move from in town, they don't get it, but from out of town, they get that space. So, and then we also have the backfill restaurant incentive. So if there's an open restaurant and someone moves into it, we'll share sales tax with them to help them with their capital costs. So again, it's empty, so we're getting nothing. So if they generate sales tax, that's just a plus. So we just share that with them up to 25% of their capital costs. So those are all the things we do. But I just think generally speaking, as I look up and down the row, when we put those in place, it was much more of a concern. Those things are still in place because they've been effective, but I don't really have the concern anymore about all these open restaurants because I know Fogo de Chao is going into TGIF. I know that Houlihan's likely has something going in there. So those and others are expanding. So I feel pretty good about all of those and don't really see big issues. The issues that we talk about and we're actually analyzing are the strip centers, which are outside of that corridor. Every one of them has a different story, every single one. And staff is diving into what is the story for each of those, right? Some of them is the owner's just asking rents that are way too high, right? Owns the place or whatever. Some it's a dated facade. Some it's location or traffic patterns have changed, right? Some have always had a good one. Coach's Corner has always, that thing seems to do well with who's there, but there's always like a 20% vacancy. They can't, so why? So we're trying to understand the whys of each specific site. 179th and Wolf, Jewel, okay? Always wondering why it wasn't, and then boom, all these goes in there, and then everything takes off. And you already had a Jewel, right? And everything took off on that corner, and everything's filling up. The other one is closer to me, 159th and Wolf, right? Why did McDonald's, and it was the lowest performing McDonald's in town, why? Why Starbucks? Why Walgreens? All on that corner. You'd think that corner would be good. And I think that corner will be great once Wolf Road fills out with homes, and I think that's what maybe someone's planning. But on the flip side, Sportsplex brings a lot of traffic. Cafe Malay kills it. Anthony's is expanding and kills it there. Girl in the Park was doing great there, and then they ran into some accounting troubles, and so they're having. But so again, what's the story? Why is that happening there, right? So, and those are things we have to understand because as we improve, I think we all know retail was going to shrink. We were over retailed. We've probably gotten to a point where I think COVID probably pushed us to the equilibrium point between brick and mortar and e-tail, if you will. It kind of pushed us along faster. And so we're more at an equilibrium. But still, if we protect the core, what are we potentially going to lose? We're going to lose these strip centers. Now, some of them, here's another good one, OPA, over, right, in Riviera. The logical thing for that is probably to be townhomes. It's probably not to stay commercial, right? When will that happen, right? So, but every strip center is going to be different. So we just have to look at each one separately as we go forward. But that's probably where the struggle is going to be: is how do we fill those retail spaces? And what a lot of them may end up an office space, a lot of them may end up a residential, and maybe only some won't be retail. So we'll just have to see going forward. That was a very long answer to that question, but it's an important topic. Got her and then.
I have two questions. You probably don't know, but do you have any idea why Northwestern closed their cancer building?
What?
Northwestern, do you have any idea why they closed that building?
Close what building?
The building on LaGrange and around 163rd, is it?
I didn't even
Their
know
sign
that.
is down and,
I don't even know Northwestern
Yeah.
had a building on
yeah, they had a radiation center. It's a big building.
163rd and
167th around there, yeah.
that's not ours, it wasn't in Orland Park.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's Orland Hills over there, Tinley Park, so I don't know.
Okay, I was
I
just
don't know
curious
the
as
answer,
to.
but I'm not aware of Northwestern closing anything in Orland.
Okay, yeah, they had a big building over there that nobody's in there.
Yeah, there's some medical centers there on the east side of town, those are not in Orland Park, except for Silver Cross is. So once you get past Wendy's, then from there to 171st is ours. Then from 171st to I-80 is Tinley. From that Wendy's to about probably, the Wendy's to about Lifetime is Orland Hills. So,
And is there a new housing development going in on 159th and LaGrange Road, where PD's used to be? Somebody said they were-
159th and LaGrange, there's not a housing development at 159th and LaGrange. What we've seen there is a mixed-use office, retail, restaurant concept there. I think what you're talking about, Kelsey, can you pull up Google Maps and pull up LaGrange and 159th? And give the satellite view would probably be better. So I'm just trying to get bearings of, okay, so, yeah, so the Costco there, right there, okay? So Kelsey, go down, go straight to the, no, don't zoom in. Bring the cursor, just to bring the cursor now to the left, right there. Yeah, so where you see the bend in the road there, you see the open space. Here, I'm gonna go up here and just point it out. Make it easier. So this space right here, there's a home development there. Pulte, I'm not, I'm a little old school in Orland Park. I'm not the biggest fan of national builders, but that's who's there today, right? The Pultes, the Lennars. I like the quality of the local builders that we had, and that's what I have in my house. But they obviously did Southmore. They just were approved at the planning commission. They're going to come to the board, and I believe it's 125 single-family homes, all not asking for any variances on density, not asking for any variances on lot sizes. My understanding is the only variance is lot frontage because of the way it's laid out and because of some of the wetlands and some of that. Some of the lot frontages aren't as wide, but the overall lot size is still over 10,000 square feet, all of them. So, but that'll be a great project. I mean, we certainly need housing stock. So, we also have someone up here that has a question, just so you know. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Good morning. I was wondering your thoughts about the School District 230 contract. What kind of results the school district is having as far as educating children, and are there any DEA policies that they have?
School district is not part of the mayor's oversight, so District 230 is its own board, its own. I don't even know the details of the contract. I've heard it, so I'd be talking out of just what I've heard about, not what I've actually seen or read. I have 5 unions here we have to deal with, and we have contracts on. I don't have any time to look at District 230's contracts. I don't. They're a completely separate body, other than the fact that Carl Sandburg is in Orland Park and our students go there. I'm not. I just have no oversight over them at all, and so that's So I may have some personal opinions on District 230. I will say I went there. It was a great school when I went there. My kids went there. It was great when I went there. When they went there, I don't know the performance now. Couldn't tell you because my kids my last one was in there 12 years ago. So it's been a while. So, but again, that's just something the mayor has no control over, other than making sure that the roads to get there are clear, that the public safety is, and we do have a resource officer there. So those are the things where we get involved.
What do you feel currently are the top 3 challenges facing the village?
The top 3 challenges facing the village. State of Illinois, state of Illinois, state of Illinois. State of Illinois is the top challenge, I think, and for a myriad of reasons. How they're running the state is fiscally unsustainable, to say the least. They have tried to balance their backs on municipalities. So there is a fund called the LGDF that historically, and some of you have heard me talk about it, they share 10% of income tax with the villages. That goes back to 1969, and it's on a per capita basis. So obviously we pay more in than we get out, but we still 10%. In 2011, that was lowered to about 5.5. It was supposed to ratchet back up. You know, we did our part, if you will. It was ratcheting back up under the Rauner administration. It was up to 8, and then it went right back down as soon as he's been gone. And now it's up at 6, so it went back down to 5.8, I think, and they've been ratcheting it up like 0.1% every year, so we're like 6.4. But to put it in real dollar terms, I think next year we're losing $8 million worth of revenue. I told you how big our operating budget was. Our operating budget is, just say, 55 to 60 million. That's a pretty big hit that we have to figure out how to absorb, right? That $8 million is a lot. And over that whole time period, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 million. Well, when you think about our unfunded capital projects, we're 110 million. You think about a $47 million loss in the triangle and $60 million, they're using our unfunded capital, you can pay for it all, right? So that's the biggest thing. And then they also, Pritzker eliminated grocery tax, which looks great from a political perspective. Wonderful. Saves you 1%, $1 out of 100. Here's the problem. The state actually gets none of that money. He says, oh, I did all this and we took the hardship. No, they took nothing because that's the one tax, the one sales tax that goes directly to the village. So that's a $2.7 million loss starting in 2026. That's 5% of our operating budget. So tack that on with the LGDF, then throw in all the unfunded mandates that they do, right? So, and we wanted body cams, but body cams, unfunded mandate, right? The schools suffer from the unfunded mandates, just constant things that they say you have to do this and you have to do that. Now we get out of some of it because we're home rule, but nonetheless, that still has a huge impact. So that's number one, the state. I think, and with that, the population that's leaving because of the state, I mean, it's challenging. Our population is slightly growing. We're doing better than most. But it's a lot to overcome, a lot of headwinds. Cook County, next problem. The state's attorney, this kind of goes with the state a little bit, but the no cash bail, the SAFETY Act, it was really Kim Fox's policies. I don't see these policies aren't really changing, right? We have a justice system that's broken in so many ways, but victims are not getting the support that they should be getting. Our police don't get the support that they should get from Cook County. Cook County also has a lot of burdensome regulations and taxes that make it difficult, and the property taxes, not so much, believe it or not, it's not so much on homes. I know your home property taxes are going up, but it's the commercial property taxes are just crushing. We have a piece of our land is in will, which is good, but we're so fortunate to have the mall and have all the traffic it brings because it overcomes these. Most towns can't overcome it. So we've been able to overcome it because we're doing so well. So those fiscal pressures are just the biggest hurdle. And then I think the last concern or hurdle is just the uncertainty in the marketplace when it comes to retail when you have so much retail, right? We always have to think about how we're going to do that. And redoing that in the face of Illinois and Cook County is really challenging, right? So that's the thing we're really, really focused on because, all of the capital projects that we're able to do, all of the catch-up that we've had to do, we've done that, okay? Now we just have to implement that plan. But implementing that plan means that we can't have $2.7 million like the grocery tax go away, right? We can't see a big dip in retail. All that would impact our ability to implement these plans. Under the best information we have, we should be able to implement them. But if any of those things change significantly, that's a problem. So that's the corner, and nobody can necessarily predict it. So as I always say, we try to be an island. You think about any of the states that are poorly run, financially in trouble, there's still very nice areas, nice places to live. I think Orland Park is one of those. If you look at Cook County, it's not the place people would love to go move to. But Orland Park's fantastic, right? So we want to remain that. We want to remain a nice, a really great place to live inside of all the other problems.
If I could just follow up a little bit. So we see a lot of that coverage in the news about in Chicago and these spikes in crime, specifically like with carjackings and these massive people rushing into a store, grabbing and running. Has that made its way down to Orland Park at all, or have we been kind of isolated from that?
No, I mean, you know, have we had an incident here and there? I imagine we probably have, but at the end of the day, so the last 6 years of index crimes, which include the crimes you're talking about, so index crimes are, you know, any violent crime, retail theft, shoplifting is an index crime. We've been tracking that for 31 years now, and the last 6 years are the lowest 6 years of, in fact, I think we'll have these new numbers, will be the lowest 7 years of crime, the last 7 years that we've ever had. And that's largely due to policies that we put in place to improve. So in 2017, so this is going to be another long answer, but in 2017, when Kim Foxx took office, before I took office, by the time I took office, we were already seeing spikes in violent crime. And the chief came to us with some ideas, so we implemented those ideas. So we put a targeted response unit. Some people call it the tactical response unit, but regardless, it's four detectives, and they proactively look for certain things. And they've been fantastic. We've done the mobile response unit. I worked really hard to get the youth supervision program put in at the mall, and the mall was very resistant, and they finally tried to do it. That's had a huge, huge impact at the mall. And as I told them, I said, listen, you know you're battling a perception problem? They go, well, crime's not high. I said, you're right, it's not, but it's a perception problem. How do you improve perception? Make people feel better about being here. And so they put it in on Fridays and Saturdays. Those were the highest retail theft times, Fridays and Saturdays. I think we've had less than 5 retail thefts during youth supervision hours in 3 years. Okay, so it worked, right? So we've put all those things in place. We also invest a lot of money in investigations because we catch them. When they commit a crime here, we catch them. Our clearance rates are off the charts relative to any department around us, any national norm. Well, criminals know they're gonna get caught. So when they come here, they actually pay for their food, they pay for their stuff, they don't steal stuff. Why? It doesn't mean there aren't criminals here, but they're just not committing crimes here because they don't want to get caught. They get caught. And so that has had a huge impact to driving those things down. The Walgreens had a theft, over $1,000 worth of alcohol. And the person basically, asked him to stop, and he goes, just go ahead and call the cops, honey. And he just kept taking. We get there, and she refuses to sign the complaint, corporate policy. So now we can't chase him. We could have caught him, but now we can't do any investigation, can't do anything because she didn't sign the complaint. I wasn't happy, chief wasn't happy. Part of our liquor license is you have to cooperate with police. So I took away their liquor license for a couple of weekends and fined them about $5,000, and now they sign complaints. But the eye-opener for me was, is this part of our business license code? No. So we made it part of our business license code, and we had a couple of stores, one in the mall in particular, that would never sign complaints for retail theft. So we fined them a couple times. They started signing complaints. What was the rationale? It's corporate policy, you know, that, it's just acceptable loss. We don't want any, you know, and yeah, we don't want any trouble. But you're inviting trouble, right? And we don't advocate that they take things into their own hands. You know, we totally agree with don't try and stop them, but sign the complaint so we can catch them. Well, they were having a huge retail theft problem too. We fined them. They started signing complaints. Retail theft problem went away. Imagine that. Common sense. you charge people, they get caught, they realize they're not going to get away scot-free, they're not coming anymore. These are just common sense things, but we've implemented those things, and that's why I think we do a good job. So we have, I think it's going to be like the 4th or 5th straight year lowest violent crime in the state for towns over 50,000. 360 suburbs in the US, the biggest 360, we're number 2 for lowest property crime, and we're number 5 for lowest violent crime out of 360 suburbs. So I think it's working. Even in Cook County, you can have success, but it's very, very challenging to get prosecutions, to get the state's attorney and all that on board with these things. The amount of evidence we have to generate, I mean, we could probably generate half as much and still get a conviction in most places. Here, it's just off the charts. That's why when you hear the state's attorney say, whoa, my conviction rate is 90-some%. Yeah, that's because you actually don't take any cases that aren't a slam dunk that someone who's just out of law school or not even through law school could get through. So that's why.
I was wondering if you could bring us up to date on the development of the land from behind Lazy Boy along 159th all the way to where the old KFC used to be.
So that development came in front of the board. The board voted it down 4-3. I voted for it. So this idea that the board unilaterally does what I say is a bunch of crap. We generally agree on just about everything because most of these, like the common sense of signing complaints and not having crime, right? We generally agree on these things. Most of them are common sense. That particular project was commercial along LaGrange, commercial along 159th. They were going to lead with a hotel along 159th, but there were also 120 apartment units behind that. So if you want to blow that up at that intersection a little bit, now move, there you go, blow it up a little more, okay, and now slide it up a little, nope, the other way. There you go. Now I'm going to go up and show you this. So it was commercial because they actually own a little lot here. All of this is owned by the same developer, okay? So it was commercial here, hotel here, which would have helped the KFC, another commercial here. They were postulating there's probably going to be restaurants, okay? And then back here, there were 4 buildings. They were going to be apartments for rent, 120 units, I think, total, okay? Now, this is a wetland, giant wetland, okay? I support it. I think one of the reasons it wasn't supported was because of, well, one was apartments, and the other was because they weren't committing to enough commercial. Because we've seen this before, where they promise commercial, build the residential, and they walk away, okay? In this case, they were committing to the hotel first, okay? So which is what, if they weren't, I wouldn't have done it. But they were going, and it was part of the agreement was that they would have full occupancy of the hotel before they would get any occupancy in the apartments. That was part of the agreement. Some of the board members wanted more commitment than that. One is just anti-apartment. Here's my thing on apartments, okay? Not a fan, general, of rent products. I think we want to be a for ownership community, but some people do need to rent. My parents rented when I was a kid here, their whole time, pretty much, till I was 14 anyways. So some people do want to rent for other reasons, and right now there's a lot of rentals, or a lot of people wanting to rent, okay? Here was my rationale for saying why I think apartments here, there are some places in Orland, apartments just, that's the only thing that's ever going to make sense, right? It's not going to be single, no one's going to build single-family homes or buy them, 94th Avenue, 150th, no one's going to do that. Probably no one's even going to buy townhomes in there. And this whole thing is not going to be commercial, back to our problems with retail, right? We don't want that much more retail. So the fact that we're getting some restaurants and getting commercial and a hotel, which we do need, we know the hotel will fill up, and it was a nice hotel, that was beneficial to us. And this property, there hasn't been a proposal on this property for 35 years, okay? I just don't think that there'll be a better project than that. I do think they're going to resubmit with maybe a few tweaks, but that's what I think. And also, these buildings back here are 4-story. So it's not like it's out of you know, these are 4-story buildings right here. So it's not like this is like out of character for what's there. So that's kind of the, so that's basically the status of that particular, that particular project. Our rental to ownership, let's see, we just did a study on that. So in 2017, we were #1 in the whole country or 2018, for any community with more than 20,000 homes, we had the highest ownership occupied dwellings of anyone in the country. And we were at 87 or 88. I think we've dipped to like 86 or 85 and a half. Still very, 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 very high ownership. Also, we recently put in a rental ordinance. So one of the concerns is that investors, I'll get to you in just a second, investors have been buying properties sight unseen and then renting them. You know, and you've seen that nationally. And so we've seen a little bit of that here. We're trying to head that off at the pass because they don't care. And they don't care what it looks like or how things are maintained or any of that. We do. So we implemented, we did a lot of research. It was actually the best work I think staff's done since I've been here, as far as the research and what they put together, and they found all the laws and all the legal stuff associated with it. So what we came up with was an ordinance that restricts the number of rentals in a census block. So, and the census block, best way to describe it is start at a corner and then keep turning right until you get back to that corner, okay? So some census blocks are 1 block, some might be 3, just depending on how the road lays out, okay? But a max of 10% rental units in any 1 block. And we also address some of the, you know, pre-existing grandfathering and all that as part of all that. But that has actually been upheld in court. So it's something that we know we can hang our hat on. And that would keep the amount of rental units in a particular neighborhood. And that includes condos. If you weren't approved as apartments and you're condos, you can't have more than 10%. So you can't see a condo and townhome community turn into rent communities suddenly. Now, what's an exception to that is if they are approved as rentals from the board to begin with. So if it's approved as a rental community, then it would stay that way. But anything that's not, doesn't. So I'm going to get to him, and then I'll get back to you.
Yeah, that was part of my question about rental. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
I'm a resident of Orland Park, and one of my concerns was the rental. And you partially did explain to us, but I know that there's these high, these investors that actually buy the properties off-site, and then they just put rents in there.
Right.
But what about people that actually live in Orland Park and own property and they didn't get a rental license?
So they can still get a rental license, you just can't have more than 10% in any particular census block. And actually, the other thing that we put in place is that no individual can manage more than 8 units. So that way, those big investors can't buy 30 units. And most small investors, I don't know too many small investors just live in here and have 1 home that go buy 7 or 8 more, you know what I mean? Yeah. So we thought of that, and anytime the house is shown, a leasing agent has to be on site, so they can't just give a code, because we were having a problem with that. They would give a code, and then the code would go to everybody, to every criminal around, and there you go. They go in and they rip all the stuff out of the house. So we had that a couple times. So we addressed all of those issues with that. So now, because if you own 2 rentals and you have your house, those are pretty valuable to you. You're not going to just say, oh, yeah, here's a code. Go get. You're going to go show the person, right? So it's the investors that would do that. So that's why we put those in place.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So another question up here.
Does that affect temporary, like Airbnb, just?
We don't allow any short-term rentals.
Okay, there's no short-term rentals. And as far as the 10%, is it just as first come, first serve, as far as deciding who gets to be that 10%?
Yes. And we have actually run into one weird case already where it was someone, because you're allowed without a rent, you don't need a rental permit to rent a family. We had someone that was renting, then rented to family, so they stopped their permit, and then they were going back to renting,
And they didn't renew their permit.
and there's 10%.
Oh, and somebody
And
else.
so, and somebody else took it, as, when we were doing all of this. So we actually came up with a workaround to that, because that seemed pretty unfair to that particular individual who never had a problem, always did everything, and now you rent to your family, and now all of a sudden you can't do that anymore. So, I'm sure there'll be some other tweaks, but generally, and there are some that are over 10% now. They're allowed to stay there, but when they sell, they won't be able to rent. So, when it changes hands, so it'll have to drop below the 10% level. Yep, first come, first serve. So, so if you're desiring to get into the rental business in Orland Park, you probably ought to check before you buy the house to make sure that you can actually do it. So, and we do still have our crime-free rental housing ordinance, and you have to register and all that, and we do inspect and all that.
I'm just curious, the apartments, I think there's still apartments off 143rd behind Chicago, University of Chicago. Those are all apartments, correct?
9750 were all apartments, yes.
Yeah, is that, and the same thing with behind Chuck Lager? Those are all behind?
Yes, those were all approved before I got here. Total, I think, between the two, 525 units. Those were approved as apartments.
Do you know what the occupancy is? I'm curious.
Full. As far as I know, full. I mean, above 95%, which is full, because there's always turnover.
You mentioned you're putting in homes behind Costco. Pulte is looking at that. What is going to be the access roads? Because that road going into Costco is a disaster most of the day.
Well, it's not really a disaster past Costco, but so if you look at this here, and I haven't seen the final plan hasn't come in front of the board. Move it up just a little, maybe other way. Keep going. Keep going, so people can see it with these boards in the way. Okay, so there you go. So they'll come in off of here, okay? So there's an access road off of here. I believe and then there's an access road, so this is where the theater is here. So right here, the south part of this theater. So if you want to pull we'll pull these down so you can see. Can everybody see it now? See it now? Okay. And I'm going from memory because I haven't seen the final version, but they will come in off of here. They will come in off of 165th Street here. So there'll be connections, so there'll be flow through here. And then eventually, they'll be able to go here. This project here, when that gets put in place, it will likely be a TIF, and the reason why is because we'll use that TIF money this road needs to go in, and there's actually an intersection here already built for a light as part of the Grange Road. So it would connect this and fully connect as planned, fully connect this together, so they'd be able to go out this way as well. So this way and this way. And then there's also stubs to go that way when things develop when this develops out. A TIF is a tax incentive financing district. So there's a really good video on that explains them. Long and short of it, you'll hear from the school districts, oh, you take away tax money from it. We don't. It doesn't. What it does is it freezes taxes at its current level for all taxing bodies. And then anything that's developed, any new property taxes up to 23 years, and usually you set them up for the full length, you can use for public infrastructure improvements like that road, okay? That's how they're supposed to work. Now, the triangle was a TIF failure where they did all that infrastructure and they had no plan. The idea is you have a plan first, build the infrastructure with the plan so that all that stuff that's built generates the property tax. There were a lot of mistakes in the triangle TIF, which was building all the infrastructure with no plan. Now you've tied developers' hands. They can't even build what they envision, right? You also put a non-for-profit. So University of Chicago pays no property tax. So we get nothing to go towards that. So that's where they can go wrong. They're a very good economic development tool if used properly. And Orland Park Place was one that was used properly. They actually shut it down early, and there was a big pool of cash sitting there that got spread out equal, percentage-wise equally across all the taxing bodies. So that also happens. And that's what, if it's successful, as soon as we get all the infrastructure in, stop it and let it go back on the full tax rolls. That would be the plan. So, but the reason to do it is because you need public infrastructure. Another good example would be Andrew Corporation, because if the cleanup that's needed there still. So that one makes sense where the developer's going to need help with that cleanup, and that property tax can be used. And it's obviously in the village's interest and our residents' interest to clean that property up. So, other questions?
Yes, thank you. So you mentioned briefly the legal requirement that renters have to sign some waiver as regarding.
It's not the renters, it's the landlords.
Well, I don't understand what you're referring to in that case. Because I live in Orland Park, but as a renter. Now, I was required to sign some kind of a crime prevention waiver of some kind that if I was suspected of criminal activity, then I would allow myself to be evicted.
Okay.
Now,
yeah.
My question to you is, has that ever been challenged legally in a court of law? That particular
It has. So it has not. I mean, I think I know of one case where the process went further than others, and the person was allowed to stay in their home, and we investigated everything and said, no, they should not be kicked out of their home. They actually tried to get rid of crime-free rental housing at the state level through state legislation, and they were using our case as their example. And one of our legislators come to me, I said, well, let me investigate. I'm like, that person was never evicted. They were threatened, they committed, there was something that happened that flagged it, said, hey, they need to be evicted. A full investigation was done, and then they were allowed to stay. So I said it actually worked as it advertised. They weren't actually evicted. They were worried that they were going to be, but the process worked. So I'm not aware of any. I mean, it may have happened, but I just don't know. I don't see, I don't see every police report and everything.
I understand that, but my concern was the constitutional legality of that.
It's constitutionally legal. There's no question about that. There have been, and we're not the only ones with this. I mean, a lot of the suburbs around us, particularly the east of us, use this very effectively to help control some of their areas, and it's really important to them. And the state tried to pass a law that would override our abilities to have these laws and have home rule laws like this, because these laws are constitutional. And the mayors were effectively able to lobby to make sure that did not pass, because we want to be able to have control of our own communities. You're welcome. Yeah, as you can imagine, the village has a lot of, we're big, we have deep pockets. If we cross the line on these things, it would be costly for us, so we're very careful about making sure that what we do is constitutional.
Clarify, he said suspected. Is it suspected or convicted?
I think it's convicted.
Okay.
Suspected is not.
Right, that's
right.
words.
Yeah, but I don't know all the words, but I know it's legal. I know that we've effectively used it in the past, and I haven't heard of any successful challenges to it. I guess that's what I know. So what I find interesting after an hour is pretty much all of our questions have been about. For the most part, have been about development and projects and all of that, which makes me feel really good, because when I got here, we had fixed 10 parks in the last 20 years out of 60 parks. We fixed 32 in the last 5. Plus, we've done John Humphrey, we've done Schuschler Park. Second phase of Schuschler Park, by the way, next year is going to be the All Abilities Playground, which goes here. So that's kind of a depiction of what that will look like. You've got Dugan Park with the pickleball courts being expanded with 10 lit pickleball courts starting next year. You've got the police firing range going in. Well, we've done all these things. We've Centennial Park West. So we've done all these great things with our parks. I'm not hearing about our parks anymore because we've done such a good job with them. I'm not hearing about our roads because our local roads, we've put so much into them. Back in 2018, our average road condition rating, 0 to 100, 100 being the best, was 48. Now it's 65. So, and 70 is considered best in class. So we are getting there, with the investments that we've made. And we're getting, well, the nice thing is we're getting there because there's two things that go on here. You'll hear people say, well, let's just do them all at once. Problem is if you do them all at once, 20 years from now, some other poor board is stuck with trying to fix them all at once. So the goal is to fix them so that you can routinely fix 2 parks every year. I mean, think about this. We have 60 parks, roughly, 66. Fixing one every other year. 132 years, I think everyone here knows that's not fast enough, right? So we need to get into, 2 to 3 parks a year to renovate them, right? And how do you get from all these parks in bad condition to, not the newer ones, but all the older ones, how do you get them all up to speed at the same time, not stick it to the next group, right? So we've done 32 over the last 5 years, and we're slowly, and I think 2 years from now, we're gonna be back down to 3, and so now we're on a steadier schedule. So they'll be able to, it kind of softens the blow of everything happening at the same time, so that the next group should be able to keep us on that 2 or 3 years. Same thing with roads. My subdivision, I've been there for 20 years. We're still way down the list. We should really be getting into each road every 20 years, 22 years, and I'm still well down the list because we had that much catch up to do, right? But we're getting there, and we went from, we doubled the amount we're spending on local roads. We did that for about 5 years. Now we brought it down a couple $1 million, and we'll do that for about 5 years, and then we should be on a steady state. And the nice thing is, once you get to that point, some of these road construction projects, if you let them get bad, they have to be rebuilt. And that's terribly expensive. Milling 2 inches of asphalt is not nearly as expensive as rebuilding roads. So some of these roads like Fernway, that we just, it had been 40 years since they've been built. They had to be completely reconstructed. All of the ones that we annexed from Cook County. So Fernway, started with Fernway, Orland Hills, not the city, but there's actually a subdivision. Laguna Woods, I think Laguna Woods is done and Orland Hills is now on the list. And those are massive reconstructions, so that eats up a lot of the budget, right? So you should be seeing in your neighborhoods, if you drive around the neighborhood, you'll see a lot more streets that have been redone. Maybe not yours yet, but we're gonna get there. So, but the nice thing is, I'm not hearing about that. I'm hearing about what are we doing with development, and with development, it's all these little strip center things. It's not the big stuff, right? I mean, Sears is the one big thing we still have left. The buyer, the one that bought it from the theater, what they want to do, no way we'll ever approve. That's been communicated. They want to do like a flea market there. Not going to happen. Not going to lower the mall. The mall won't give them access to the mall if they try to do it, but we won't allow it. Because they're over 50,000 square feet, we don't have to allow anything. It's back on the market, so we know there's potential buyers that we're very excited about, so hopefully that'll happen. So,
I just have a quick question off topic. With some of the ponds, we live on the pond on Marion, and I was just curious, we spend a lot of time, he does actually, cleaning up that pond. We go around a couple times a year and clean it up and stuff. Is there any way of getting, like, I don't know if they do this for the ponds, put in like a sprinkling system for getting the water moving?
We will not put aerators in, so we have aerators in a few ponds, but generally we will not put in aerators. They're very expensive, they're expensive to run, they're expensive to maintain, and not necessary. Most of our ponds are part of the drainage system, so they're supposed to go up and down. So there are a couple places where we have aerators. Some of that's for aesthetics, like you see it out here. But for the most part, we're not going to put in aerators. We have evaluated all of our ponds as well. We have 380 of them, and about half of them are village-owned. And We rated them on a scale of 1 to 5, and 5 being the worst. And so, just like our roads, we started with the ones that were the worst. We're trying to get them all to a 2 or above, so we're working our way through that. But what that means is that means naturalizing them. It means putting native plants around them. It means eliminating the grass that runs off fertilizer into them and puts, that's how algae and all that happens. And some people are resistant to that because they want their river rock all the way around the pond. Well, that's not really an effective way to manage the pond. So we do all that. Then we've had people where we've done it, then they've gone and mowed it all down. And all that stuff just makes it challenging for us, because what we want is it to be natural, because that requires the least amount of maintenance and makes the pond the healthiest, and you see less of the algae and all that. And if we do have algae problems, we do treat for that stuff. But again, we have to be cognizant of the fact that these are stormwater driven, so it does go through the stormwater system. It does end up back in Lake Michigan for the most part. So the ones we own, we have stewardship contracts with 3 different companies for the ones that we own. For the ones the HOA owns, they're required to maintain them, but we do let them know, here's what the report says, here's the things that you should be doing to it. We do monitor them. If they get too bad, we can take them over and charge the HOA, but we try to work with the HOA to make sure they're maintaining them right.
Is there a proper process for reporting potholes?
Yeah, 311, so you can do that, you can do it online. You can also call and report them as well to Public Works. And they just take them and they go through them. We fill about 4,000 potholes a year. So it's part of actually, it's going down a little bit because we're fixing our roads. So it's getting better, but we still fix a ton of them, so.
Back to the ponds. You said they're rated on a scale of 1 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way we could find out where our pond is rated?
Just give Bonnie your address and we'll tell you what pond and we'll tell you what it's rated. We can probably send you the report or send you a link to the report that shows it.
And another question, the new Portillo's drive-through, and you mentioned it when I brought up the old property for Don's Hot Dogs. When did the MWRD start requiring that a piece of property has to retain their rainwater?
So MWRD has been, which was put into, I can't even remember when it was put into place, but it's basically across all of Cook County and Chicagoland about stormwater management, essentially. And it's become a behemoth as far as government bureaucracy. And they came out with new requirements 2018. They constantly come out with new requirements, but the big ones were 2018, they required volume control on site. And then they also required, they had whole new rainwater projections. So it completely changed how much rainfall you had to design for. And it was way, way higher than what it used to be. So a lot of people that had approved projects in 2016 waited till 2021. Their approvals were expired and they can't even functionally do the project anymore because of what they have to now do. So those are the types of things we're dealing with.
So it's like Orland Mall, kind of grandfathered in?
Yeah, places that are already there are grandfathered in. And there's no more stormwater, based on these new rules, there's no more stormwater capacity there. So that's why when Sears redevelops, we will likely, you think about how huge that parking lot is. Well, it'll beautify the property a little bit to do a nicely landscaped pond, but 2, it will provide a lot of stormwater volume control. So and basically the way it will be set up with whoever develops it, if the village participates in that, is it will allow those off-site lots to use it so that it can be counted towards their MWRD requirements, which will help those outlots in the back. Like if you think about where Plato's Closet and where the second theater was back there, those areas back there, they're empty. no public safety questions. There were no parks questions. And any other questions?
Hello. I was just wondering, the park that used to have the concerts at 143rd by CVS over there? Is that this?
At the Triangle, yeah?
That one, is it?
No.
Oh, that's what you call the triangle, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know, I thought it was called something else.
So we did, so the Market in the Park was put there to try, frankly, before I got here, to try and make it, the Triangle, this destination. It's like, it's still not, it's just a park with nothing else around it. So we did Market in the Park there, now we do it over at Centennial Park West. But this park, and actually it's changed from, I think it's changed a little bit from this as well, but, so this park this will be an ice rink. So, it's gonna be called Heroes Park, it's gonna expand the current park, and there'll be other things around as well to hopefully activate that whole area. So, but it'll be part of that whole development.
Oh, you changed the name then. It was something else.
It's gonna be called Heroes Park. So it was called Crescent Park, yes. And other than the Market in the Park, it's never used. So, yeah, but hopefully with, restaurants and shops and stuff, it'll be used. And again, wintertime, ice skating rink, which.
Will that be during the summer?
This?
The ice skating rink?
So have you been to Maggie Daly Park?
No.
Okay. It'll be just a walking area and open area. So Maggie Daly Park has a big ribbon, that's a big walking path that it turns into an ice for skating in the winter. In Chicago. So kind of the north side of Grant Park, up in that area, north of the Bean. North and east of the Bean, I think. It's been a while since I've been there. Is that right? Yeah. Any other questions? You got a lot of them, but that's good because that's what I'm here for.
No, I'll give you a chance to brag. Since you became mayor, what accomplishment are you most proud of?
You know what? It's not an accomplishment per se. The thing I am most proud of is I have supported and helped 6 phenomenal trustees to get on the board. They are truly great people that have the village interest in mind. I know I told you earlier, everyone said, oh, they just vote in lockstep, blah, blah, blah. I've never asked them to vote for any specific thing ever. I asked them 3 things. I said, be honest with me, so I don't want to be surprised. I said, vote your conscience and do what you think is in the best interest of the people of Orland Park. And they come from different walks of life. We have an attorney, we have a CPA, we have IT consultant, we have IT sales, we have a marketing person, we have a real estate person, very different perspectives, and they really, truly give valuable input. They don't play a bunch of games. They've never once said to me, well, if you want my vote on this, you're gonna have to give me this. I can tell you, my first 2 years here, that's all it was. That's why we got some of these crazy things we have. It's like you had a museum board because one trustee was in charge of it. You had this, it became their little fiefdoms, right? It was truly like big city politics in Orland Park. But we wouldn't be able to do all these things without their help and their support, and particularly Bill Healy, Mike Malani, and Cindy Katsinas. They came on the board when it was 4-3, right? When they came on the board, with me there's 4 of us that were generally like-minded. Every single one of them could have asked for things to get the 4th vote. They never did. And we had a lot of 4-3 votes. 4-3 votes to fix your roads, 4-3 votes to fix the parks. John Humphrey was being blocked, 4-3 vote for that. Our roads, spending more money on our roads was being blocked. When they came in, first meeting, expand what we're doing on the roads. expand what we're doing on the parks. Because I had identified in 2 years all these problems and all the capital needs that we had. I'm like, we've got to start tackling them. We can't keep kicking this can down the road. And they made all those hard votes 4-3, right? They voted to get rid of pensions for elected officials, 4-3, right? They voted to put all our board meetings on video, which I was blocked from before, right? So all of these things that they did to increase transparency, to improve our parks, to improve our roads, all of that stuff was from them. You know, that's been the biggest thing, is to just get good people that they're not here for politics. They're here just to do the right thing for the people. And that, to me, is the most important thing, and how you get a really good board. Doesn't mean you can't disagree on things, but most things, as I've learned as a mayor, you know, I'd never been elected to anything before, so I've never run for anything before. I'm suddenly mayor. I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of mayors. Obviously, I'm a Republican. A bunch of them are Democrats in the Chicagoland area, right? You'd be absolutely shocked at how little disagreement there are on almost every issue. Because we all have our own towns. We all want the same thing. We want to provide the services our residents want and need at the lowest cost possible, because we want to keep taxes down. We want our communities safe, and we want people to enjoy living there, right? And we want economic development. We all want the same things. And there's really no conflict, because they have their town, I have my town, right? So there's no political conflict. So when you all have the same goals, the solutions to the problems are usually really obvious. You know, like, we oppose the Safety Act. Why? Because it was bad, right? And we knew it was bad. We oppose what they're doing with the LGDF. We all want to see that money restored, because we know what it's doing to our communities, right? All of the law I told you about, the crime-free rental housing, I mean, I don't know of a single town that wasn't pushing to get that. I mean, you think about that, 1,370 towns, and there are a lot of issues that the state goes with that 1,370 towns are opposing. So that should tell you something, right? And so if you get people that are really just interested in solving the problems, the solutions usually are fairly obvious. There might be some things on the edges, but the solutions, just like the shoplifting and, you know, signing a complaint, voila, it's not really rocket science. So that's probably the big, you know, we've done a lot of great things, but it's really getting them that made all the difference.
I appreciate that. I've been a resident of Orland Park for about 5 years now. I live within a stone's throw of the Riviera Country Club, and pardon me if this was brought up before I arrived late.
It was, but go ahead.
It was? Okay, well, this is my main reason for coming. So 7 boarded up windows, a tennis court that looks like crap.
You know.
And I live like 4 homes down from it, and I'm really upset by it. What can you tell me about what is going on with that, if anything?
What I can tell you is that there's a lot of, so not that exact issue wasn't covered, but there's a lot of courtroom activity, a lot of, you know, we have to follow the law. It takes a long time. There's a lot of concerns about that property. I'd said it earlier. I actually think the logical thing for that entire property probably is someone to buy it and turn it into townhomes is probably the best fit. It's not a commercial, just not anymore. It's just not a viable commercial piece of property anymore. They obviously, the Signature Barn's doing great there. OPA, I don't know how good it's doing, but it's beautiful. Yeah, it's hanging in there. The fitness center is never gonna, it's just not, I just don't see a scenario where anyone ever takes it as a fitness center. Not with the problems that it has, and not with all the other fitness alternatives that are out there now. I just don't see that being viable. I remember when they first built it, it was a golf course where your place is at now. But we have to go through the legal process, and unfortunately, the legal process on that stuff it's painful, it's long. You don't have to go very much further than here. You can go to Beacon and 144th place right here. I think it's the second house in. You can't miss it. It's been under various exterior construction since 10 years before I became mayor. It's been in the court since before I became mayor. We can't get the courts to say, hey, finish. The courts actually say, you have to give him another permit. It's like, they haven't finished the stuff he's done. And they won't make him finish the stuff he's done, and they force us to give him other stuff. So, we know about it, we're aware of it, we're going down the legal avenues that we have available to us.
Yeah, and my home has been in my family for 30-plus years, so I had been a member of the country club for years. It was a beautiful place until I think COVID kind of did it in, and he didn't keep it up really well just prior to that. But yeah, I was just kind of curious as to what was going on. And I do want to thank you. I know some people don't like the Schussler Park, but I'll tell you, I walk my dogs past there, and I see children engaging in physical activity. They don't have their faces in an iPad or on their cell phone. They're running, they're doing laps, they're kicking a soccer ball, and I'm so thankful for that. I never thought that the park looked terrible, but now that I see the new park, I realize that the park did look terrible, and my husband and I are very grateful for that.
Who hasn't seen the Schussler Park?
Oh my God, you have to drive past it.
Can you pull up the overhead view of Schussler Park? So Schussler Park, we actually did a survey, and Schussler Park was the #1 park in the whole community park in the whole community that people said needed to get fixed. By the way, it needed to get fixed when I was a kid. It flooded. Okay, to give you the history of Schussler Park, 1960s, it was the first land that we had a developer donate. When Fernway was built, they donated the land. Okay, and volunteers built the park. So the Sod Farm in town donated the sod, the hardware company donated the fencing for the ball fields. Then Mayor Dugan he had an equipment company, brought the equipment out to move the dirt, do all that. They built it. It was literally the volunteers built this park. And it's where I played. It was the only fenced 90-foot bases when I played baseball in Orland Park. So I'm very familiar with Schussler Park, but it always had flooding problems. And so the Schussler Park redevelopment was critical in that because it's turf, we were able to put storage, water storage, 2/3 of those fields. Do we have a picture?
It's the park at midnight. It's the park at midnight.
So 2/3 of the field are underneath the field are actually water vault storage. So there's Schussler Park. So that is all turf, and 2/3 of the underneath that field is water storage. So when it rains, we had a 3-inch rain. Actually, the day we opened it, the field was perfectly playable. To your point, you said that some people don't like it. I've heard one or two. I guess the vernacular is Karens. That have complained about the park. I will tell you how many people I have that live in that neighborhood that have come to me and said that you have revitalized my neighborhood. I see kids in there all the time. I see kids playing. There's the overhead view of the park, and that up at the top there, that's the east end. That was new parking that was added. To the right, you can kind of see it looks like straw. It is straw because they put landscaping all along there. There's a walkway that goes around to the other side. Down at the bottom, you can see where you see that piece of equipment. There's now a big bathroom facility and storage facility there, storage for the pioneers and for the village as well. And so we moved the football programs there. It's a travesty. That is 88th Avenue up at the top. And it's right behind, so to the left there is the condos and then Riviera. So that gives you kind of an idea where that's at. It's the 3rd largest park in Orland Park. It used to be the biggest until John Humphrey and Schussler were built. This all happened because they were blocking fixing John Humphrey. And once we fixed John Humphrey, then we moved the Pioneers to Centennial temporarily. It was a travesty. I played on the first Pioneer football team back in 74 or 75. And when it was first created, it was created because St. Mike's was the football program my first year. And they went into a Catholic league. When they did that, they wouldn't let non-Catholic kids play. And so they basically formed a new, and I remember it well because my dad had just lost, he was on the village board that approved the mall, just lost his election, as all three of them that were up that voted for the mall did. They asked him to be part of the board, and he was the vice president, and he told them, I don't want to be, they want to be the president. He goes, I don't want to be the president. That means going to meetings, scheduling. He goes, you need money. And he goes, I'll be the vice president. I'll go out and, he goes, I don't want all the BS. I want to go out and get enough money so we have uniforms and we have equipment. Football is obviously pretty expensive. So he also talked to Mayor Dugan, who was, obviously a friend of his. He'd been on the board for 6 years with him, and said, hey, can you find us a place to play? And where we played was behind the Andrew Library. So where Dugan Park is now. So this field is where we practiced and played. But the fact that we built Centennial Park, John Humphrey, and all these other parks, and never built anything with the football program in mind, because football destroys fields, grass fields. They just do, right? It's just they play in the mud, and once you muddy on the field, and we're busy putting them in the outfields of baseball fields, which then destroy the baseball fields. So we never, ever, ever designed something with them in mind, which was, to me, just crazy. So this, we designed with the football program in mind. We also met with the soccer clubs. As you can see, the field's also lined for soccer, which you can't see because they're not out there. They weren't out there when this picture was taken. There's also a bunch of soccer goals out there as well. The goalposts are actually soccer goals are combined, but there's also soccer goals because they're half fields too. So they play on half fields for the smaller kids. And this thing is rented all the time. When it's not rented, kids are playing there all the time. And before, there was never anyone there. And even when we scheduled it, there was never anyone there because it was always flooded and unplayable. So this new, that I talked about, the new All Abilities Playground is going to be put in here next year. We just received $600,000 in funding for that from a grant. And then there's a basketball court going in there too, a half basketball court. So that'll be done next year. So we moved the sledding hill. There was a sledding hill up in this, would have been in this picture. It's now down here. So we haven't had really any snow to sled. I imagine maybe one day or two they were out there sledding, but so yeah, it's a phenomenal park. Now it's a phenomenal piece of property. It didn't used to be. About half of the work that we did there, half of the cost was stormwater related. So, but that's why the turf makes sense, because again, football tears it up, and then also with turf we can put storage underneath. So I wouldn't turf every field because it gets really expensive, but it's good to have this amenity.
I did come to one of the village meetings about the proposal for the park, and a lot of people from my subdivision attended. And I do live in an area where probably I am one of the youngest residents, so a lot of the older people did come out that day, and their complaints were like, oh, the lights, the noise and all that. But the lights are always turned off, and I know that it's done like on a cell phone app or whatever, and I'll tell you, the noise of children playing is a joyful noise. So I am thrilled to death that we have this park here. It was one of the biggest improvements that Orland Park could have ever made, and I tell everybody about it.
Well, thank you, I appreciate it. And as I tell people when they live next to parks and they go, well, if you do this, there'll be kids with making noise. I'm like, why'd you move next to a park? You know? Yeah. So kids are playing there. It's fantastic. The lights, that's the other interesting thing. We use new technology on the lights. I've been there at night. The lights don't shine except on the, it's amazing. First off, it looks like daytime on the fields. The coaches actually said they wear sunglasses during practice at night. But if you go 20 feet to the right of that fence and the backyards, there's no light there. It's like all directional. It's amazing how they, the technology with lighting and how it just doesn't spill over nearly like it used to. So yeah, it's actually a beautiful facility. So very, very happy we could get that accomplished. Got another one over here. Right there.
That's okay. I just wondered if there was a current lineup for the concert series as of yet.
Not yet. So there is stuff in the works. There is stuff in the works. I think fun stuff in the works. But you have to wait for the artist to approve it, to get back to you, do all this stuff. Then you got to align dates. And I think we're very close on having we're almost imminent on a signed contract for one. We're very close on a signed contract for another. And there's very good options. We've put offers out for the third. One had an offer in end of November. Said they would get back to us, and then they said, well, we're going to wait till after the holidays, and we still haven't heard. So yeah, so just got to get all the quirkiness of artists. And let's face it, some of these artists are older, right? I mean, that's kind of what appeals to the demographic of our town with an average age over 46. You know, they have scheduling conflicts too, so we have to work on all that. But hopefully, I would love to have something in the next month, you know, is what I would hope.
Are they going to keep it at 3 concerts?
Right now, we're planning a 3-concert series, yes. And Taste, and 4th of July, and Market on the Park, and we've kind of upgraded, we kind of expanded the budget a little bit for all those things to upgrade the talent. Like, we're going to have two different bands on July 4th, so things like that. So there's always the potential that someone could reach out and say, hey, you know, we're the promoters of this band. We're getting a very good reputation in a short time. They could reach out and say, we want to do a concert, and that wouldn't be part of our concert series. That'd be like a concert with, you know, ticket prices that were, you know, higher and all of that. It's a problem we'll figure out. You know, we'll figure that out, but when it gets there. But there'll be a lot of, the first time we do that, there'll be a lot of things we got to figure out. But that could always happen. We could always add 1 or 2 of those, but nothing in the works. Any other questions? Well, you guys going to jump in for one more? Okay. For a group that had no questions at 10:05 or at 9:05, we got to 10:40. You've had them.
I just want to know how you got the name Heroes Park. What's the meaning behind it?
So Heroes Park is because it's going to be dedicated to veterans and first responders. And they're designing it around that theme. So I don't know all the design elements, but I'm not an architect.
I think you mentioned this was your first elected office, so I'm sure there's a learning curve, everything. In retrospect, what's the top thing you would have done differently now that you look back on it?
What would I have done differently? That's a really good question. I honestly don't know that. I don't know. No, there hasn't been a vote I've taken that I would do differently. I don't think there are things that I would do differently. And I guess I go back to, not because, one, I haven't seen anything that was that we've done that's been a complete failure or anything like that, so there's nothing like that. And, you know, I would say I wish I would have gotten along with the first board better, but they were attacking me from day one. It wasn't me. I tried. Believe me, I tried. So that was a challenge. I guess I remember my dad was still alive for 2 years, and you know, after I became mayor, and he was on the board, and I asked him about the mall, and he goes, the vote on the mall ended my political career. He goes, still take it today. It was the right vote then. It's the right vote now. It was the right thing for the town. And he said to me, he goes, if you do what's right, you'll never look back and regret. If you do what you think is right at the time, you're never going to look back and regret what you've done or the vote. And that's, you know, so, you know, the stuff that we've done, I think, have been the right things to do, you know. And we were faced with a lot of the curveballs, COVID and the like. I mean, of all the things, COVID would have been the one that I would have thought there was something that I would go back and say I'd do differently. Now it turns out we actually nailed all of it along the way as you look back in hindsight and retrospect. So, you know, maybe one thing is I wish I'd have gotten here a little sooner because it'd been easier to fix some of these things. But no, you know, I've been blessed with the people we've had. I guess if there were things I would do differently, I would say along the way, we've probably made we've definitely made a few hires, and allowed someone to make a few hires that we shouldn't have done, but we adjusted. So, you know, those mistakes, I guess, that we have had, we've made adjustments pretty quick. So those are mistakes that, you know, that people make mistakes. So you just correct. But yeah, we made a few hires that we probably, we really don't have control of hires. I don't know if you guys know that. Our form of government, it's a manager-council form of government. So by statute, so it was something, I think it's the worst form of government that there is, because what happens is once we hire a village manager, he has all control over everything. The only person that works for us is the village manager. So the only leverage we have is we can threaten to fire, right? Now, a good village manager is going to work with us. Now, fundamentally, we have a board that's aligned, so it doesn't operate any differently than pretty much any other form, just because there's no division, right? My first 2 years, they hired the former deputy Democratic committeeman for my predecessor as the village manager. And he blocked me out of buildings, blocked emails, he did all this stuff. I'm the mayor. You guys think I have all that power, right? I don't. And a divided, so when the board you vote, and you're gonna vote in April for, frankly, the mayor's the one that you focus on because they set the direction for the town, right? Vote for my direction. A board that is, you know, like I was 6-1 against, they think they run everything. And they're doing against your will. Basically, they didn't want me here, so they basically were doing everything they can, saying, you have no power, we're not gonna let you do anything. And under our form of government, there's very little legal power. I have some, and I was able to use it effectively, but that's something that most people don't know, that's how it works. So when we get involved in hiring, in reality, the village manager could sue the board and the village manager would win if he went to court. That's the truth. Now, if we get a good village manager who works with us, we will, and this is what we did, we put in processes that said, we are now going to interview as well, and you'll make the final decision, but we're going to have input. So we're gonna have veto power, right? Once we did that, we've gotten much better hires. So, but in theory, again, they could, in court, oppose that. So that's why this form of government, I mean, you don't vote for a village manager, right? Does anybody here vote for the village manager? No. So really, we're accountable to you. I'd like to, if I'm accountable to you, I'd like to have the authority to actually make the changes that need to be made. And we don't, we actually have to. So this idea that the mayor does everything doesn't exist. I have to get the board to agree, and I have to get the board to basically, you know, put those policies for the village manager to implement.
So mostly advisory capacity to the mayor?
I would put it much more like a public board, like a public company board, where we're the board and the CEO runs it, right? It's a little bit more like that. I have a little bit more authority. Like if there's a emergency, I have emergency powers that trump all of that. So the riots were one of those times, right? So I do have some of that. And in practicality, when the whole board is together, then all of those the stuff that I told you, like the first years, that stuff doesn't exist, right? Because the board will fire the village manager, right? There won't be, so everyone's aligned. But the problem is, and we didn't have that before either, because the previous mayor had boards that were aligned with him for 20-some years, so there wasn't that issue. Well, suddenly when you see that issue where you have a board that's divided with the mayor, now it makes it dysfunctional. It made the first 2 years really, really, really dysfunctional and really difficult. So, but like I said, I don't think, because statutory authority to a village manager means the state has decided the powers the village manager gets. If you got rid of that, it doesn't mean that the village manager doesn't exist. There's still plenty of towns that have I think we need a village manager to administer the day-to-day, but the board should delegate the authority to them, not the state, I guess. I don't think any of us think the state runs particularly well. I don't want the state delegating. We voted it in like 1983 or some 84 as a referendum to make this. And who pushed for that? Village managers and bureaucrats pushed for this, right? And now we have it. And, you know, again, when the board is functional and not divided like we were, it works. Because the village manager will do what the board wants, because if they don't, they get fired, right? But if it's divided, like they hired a village manager, I voted against him, okay? If we reverted back to what we were, I would appoint the village manager and the board would have to approve. Therefore, both sides have to agree on who's, you know, running. I think that's more effective. And then we decide what authority they have, what authority they don't have, right? So, but it can get us in, it can get us in trouble. A village manager can get us in trouble if they do the wrong thing. So we have to be very mindful of that. So that's but so you learn something new about our form of government. Believe me, that was the biggest eye opener for me when I became mayor. I'm like, what? I can't do, nothing, right? It's like, what? I'm just one vote of 7, right? That didn't make sense to me, but that was the way it is. But again, as the mayor, you have other avenues like this. I would guess most of you don't know who our trustees are, right? Couldn't pick them out of a lineup, probably. That just goes with the territory, so.
Oh, yes, thank you. See, are you taking political related questions?
Well, it depends. I can't really talk about stuff campaign related, but you ask the question and I'll let you know what I can talk about, what I can't.
You've been accused of wrongdoing by using your power as the mayor to reward political allies and harm opponents. I won't give any specifics, but I just thought I'd...
Yeah, so I've been accused of that. I've been accused of more crimes than I can count since I've been here. But what you're talking about, I believe, was recently, and we've debunked that here. You didn't get into specifics, so it's hard for me to answer, but none of that has happened. So I guess is all I can say. I'm still here, so, the most recent was the Horton Insurance stuff that they were saying, and they're attacking our largest non-government, non-retail employer that started here, family-owned here, been our insurance agent since at least 2003. That's as far back as I could find. At least 2003. I got here in 2017. So they've been here for a really long time. And supposedly, I'm giving them contracts because they're giving me contracts. I had a business relationship with Horton Insurance before I ever got to be mayor, which I disclosed when I first got here in a meeting and didn't vote. I have abstained on the votes because I have a business relationship. The moment I put out that I had a business relationship, since that day, they have been attacking me, saying that I get illegal contracts from them, I do this, I do that. I've abstained. I don't vote, right? And they've been since 2003. They've been our insurance broker, and they're local. Why are you attacking a local business that was just acquired by a national business who has no ties to Orland Park? You keep attacking them, we're gonna lose 2 buildings full of employees on I-80. It's crazy. And frankly, I don't have a business relationship with them anymore. I still abstain, just so I don't have to deal, just as for the appearance of a conflict. I haven't had a business relationship with them I haven't done work for them since 2017 or 18. And I stopped doing work with them for my businesses. I stopped being their client in 2020 or 2021. I am still a personal client of them, So, as I tell people, is this really what you want? You really want to go after local people who have relationships with local people? Do we really want to go after our businesses? Anyways, so, and ironically, the point you're talking about Horton Insurance, they've said I have contract. They said I've taken contributions from Horton Insurance, the company. I never had, Horton Insurance, the company, has never donated to me. Horton Insurance Company did donate to my predecessor and my current opponent. So, and they've always voted for me. And I'm not saying they did anything wrong, because I don't think they did. People support who they support. They're allowed to do that. That's just our system, right? But Horton Insurance has been they've been a great provider for us. I think they charge us for administering our health insurance plan, which is about, we're up to about $5.5 million. We self-insure. I think they charge us $35,000 a year for that. So we get a home discount for sure for what they do. They like having business here in town and doing business in town. And so anyways, that's the most recent one. But I always ask people, give me specifics, specifically tell me, and if you have evidence of it, you should go to the police and you should file a complaint, because it's just been going on way too, that kind of stuff it's unnecessary. So I have more to say about it that are more political, so I won't get into it, but.
What was the total cost of Centennial Park West?
Centennial Park West is about $12 million in total, so, which was about what we projected it to be. Well, it's within our projection and contingency. That's about what it was. Same thing, Schuessler Park was about the same. The police training facility was $10 million. But think about that. When I got 1998, there were $13 million of debt. 2017, when I arrived here, there was $110 million of debt. Okay? And our streets were in disrepair, our parks were in disrepair. We built Schuessler Park, we redid John Humphrey Park, we did the police training facility, we did Centennial Park West, we fixed all these roads, we did all of that, and our debt's down to $84 million. So I think that's pretty good fiscal stewardship to be able to do that. So to not only build all that, but also lower our debt in the process. So, we still have more to go. I mean, we still have, like I said, our 5-year capital plan had $110 million of unfunded capital that we had to find other ways to fund. But, that one of the things we've done there too is we've gotten a lot of grants. 2006 to 17, I believe they got $3 million in grants. Since I've been here, we've gotten $42 million in grants. That's why we're doing Dugan Park next year, is because we got a grant. So we moved it up. It was going to be another year later, but we moved it up because we got a $600,000 grant. Schuessler Park, also supposed to be next year, $600,000 grant for this. So yeah, Dugan Park's going to be like $3.2 million to do all this, but I'm not going to turn down that $600,000. We'll move it forward. We have the fiscal wherewithal to do it, so let's take that outside money when we can get it. So we constantly, our engineering staff, Rashid, has done a fantastic job, and our parks, and our public works, they've all done a fantastic job of getting these grants, because if we can find other sources of dollars, that just advances all the capital stuff that we need to get done. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. I hope this was informative. I appreciate you being here and asking all the questions. And I'm really thankful that, like, for the first hour and a half, all the questions were about economic development stuff. That's a big change from where we were, 5 years ago. So that's great. So thank you so much.